In the next 10 to 12 years, approximately 8 to 6 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even a third grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2, you all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become number 4.
President Biden, do you support reparations?
Look, I mean, since I haven't spoken on this, got a chance. Number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single continent. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 out of our 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is that not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America. Systemic racism that has plagued our nation for far, far too long. I said that over the course of the past year that the blinders have been taken off the nation, the American people. But what many Americans didn't see or had simply refused to see couldn't be ignored any longer. Those 8 minutes and 46 seconds that took George Floyd's life opened the eyes of millions of Americans and millions of people around all over the world. It was the knee on the neck of justice, and it wouldn't be forgotten. It's not white Americans' fault, but just a fact.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today, many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
We are owed $104 trillion on the very low end, plus $735 billion recurring. This number does not include the cost of about 50 Black Wall Streets that were decimated, nor compound interest from 2017 when Sean B. Rochester's book, The Black Tax, was published, nor the cost of Black life, nor the cost of living increases, nor the war on drugs, nor the current day pandemic. The number I'm working with is for slavery, Jim Crow, and accrued ongoing systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage in the country our ancestors built with their lives. If you believe in this number as I do and would like to join me in the fight for reparations, please email me at friendsofadostv@gmail.com. That's friendsofadostv@gmail.com. Good evening on the West Coast. Good evening in the mountain. Good evening in the central. Good evening on the East Coast. You know exactly who it is, family. Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the reparationist perspective, bringing you those ADOTS, hot topics, and making the case for reparations making the case for weaponizing our vote and socializing our suffering. And today, on the Ida B. Wells 2.0 series presents Anti-Black Racism, we got day 11 updates of the Chauvin trial, family. Also, the race soldiers in Minnesota just won't stop executing us. This time they claim it's an accident. Oh yes, family, they've executed our dear, young, 20-year-old brother who had some air fresheners dangling from his mother's car rear view mirror. And this warranted his execution. Mr. Dwayne Wright. Oh, we're going to talk about how they tearing it down and burning it up and doing all manner of things over in the Minnesota. Okay? We're going to talk about the income disparities and the home ownership disparities. Oh, yeah. We're going to get all up in this topic today. This is my square over here at the Anti-Black Racism channel. As your president, for those who voted for him, not me, sits up here and pivots to protect Asians. And they just passed $31.2 billion for Native Americans. They gave Asians $80.5 million over the 6 that were slain in Georgia. Yeah, the puckery goes on, and I'm here to talk all about it. Since the mainstream media wants to mitigate these stories, this is where you can stay apprised of the state-sanctioned executions, and you can understand why I'm on my square fighting for reparations and imploring upon you to get in this fight with me. Welcome, Brian Johnson. I see you, Terry Lewis. I see you, Denise Jarrett, expert stylist. And for those of you who have yet to chat who you are, welcome one and all to the live. This is the Reparationist Perspective, so let's get right into it. First off, we're going to talk about the Chauvin trial. Buckle up, buttercups. I hope you got your libations. This is the 11th day of testimony in the murder trial of Mr. George Floyd. It concluded today after testimony from a use of force expert who said Chauvin used deadly force. No reasonable officer would have believed that was an appropriate, acceptable, or reasonable use of force, the expert law professor Seth Stoughton said. Jurors also heard from a cardiologist and Floyd's brother, Philonise Floyd, who testified as spark of life witness and remembered his brother as a leader in the household. Okay, the defense is expected to begin its case on Tuesday. So we're winding on up, family. Now, I also want to talk about how, before I jump into that, there was a motion on the floor to sequester the jury. To sequester the jury. Let me pull that up and let's get into that. Judge refuses to sequester Floyd trial. Let me find it. Judge refuses to sequester Floyd trial jury after new unrest. Let's talk about it. Oh, Minneapolis under curfew after officer shoots black motorist dead. Oh, they just getting it in. A Minneapolis curfew was set to begin today after a police officer fatally shot a young black man when she confused her handgun with her taser, fueling tensions in a U.S. city already on edge because of the George Floyd murder trial. This is something I didn't even know about. So maybe this is why they had a motion for the sequester. Let's read on. In police body camera video released in Brooklyn Center, where Sunday's killing occurred, an officer shouts, "Taser, taser, taser," but then instead fires a gun at the victim, 20-year-old Dante Wright. Oh, so is this some correlation between defense bringing a motion to the floor for a sequester? That's the story I'm going to get into. The officer drew their handgun instead of their taser, Brooklyn Center Police Chief Tim Gannon told a press conference. Gannon said it was his belief that the officer, now on leave pending an investigation, had the intention to deploy their taser, but instead shot Mr. Wright with a single bullet. This was an accidental discharge that resulted in the tragic death of Mr. Wright, Gannon said. There's nothing I can say to lessen the pain of Mr. Wright's family. Wright's killing sparked protests overnight in Brooklyn Center and the looting of a shopping mall, and authorities in Minneapolis and surrounding suburbs, including Brooklyn Center, around the curfew from 7 o'clock p.m. Today until Tuesday, 6 a.m. In the body cam footage, police officers are seen pulling Wright out of his car after stopping him for a traffic violation and discovering he had an outstanding warrant. Let's talk about that warrant. The warrant on Daunte Wright was over unpaid fines for 2 minor misdemeanors, one a marijuana case that the state now turns a profit on. Not sure about Minnesota. I know they are out here and lots of places throughout the country. So he's dead now, over $346. He pled guilty, filed for deferred payment, and they were sent to collections during a pandemic. Then he was pulled over for car air fresheners hanging from his mother's rearview mirror and killed over it. But now they're claiming it was an accident. I meant to tase him. Why would you be tasing him anyway? Let's go back. Holy shit, I shot him, the officer says, as Wright, fatally wounded, drives off. He crashed his car a few blocks away. How the officer mistook her gun for a taser was unclear. Gannon said police are trained to place handguns on our dominant side and our taser on our weak side. President Joe Biden called the killing tragic, but warned against any potential violent unrest. So they just want us to be silently annihilated while he gives protections to Asians, and we don't get an anti-lynch law passed by executive order, and we don't get these race soldiers qualified immunity dismantled. We don't get the race soldiers, the KKK, the neo-Nazis, and the skinheads labeled domestic terrorist group, but people like me who are fighting for social and economic justice for ADOX, whose ancestors built all the wealth they eat from, we're labeled Black identity extremist by the FBI. So Asians get all the protections. Asians get $80.5 million funded through AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islanders get $80.5 million, and we're told that it's tragic, but don't get all in a kerfuffle. Let us execute you, and you forgive us, and let that be that. As we neutralize you economically, and now we're coming for your vote. Got it. I think we have to wait and see what the investigation shows, Biden told reporters. Isn't this always the case when it comes to ADOX? We got to wait for more information to come to understand that we're being executed while unarmed by the race soldiers. In the meantime, I want to make it clear again, there's absolutely no justification, none for looting, he added. Peaceful protests are understandable. Let us execute your people in peace. Don't get upset. Don't raise your voice. Don't loot. Not that we're the ones looting, right? Let our civilians execute you and get out on a $2 million bond that they can clearly afford since we've neutralized you economically. You can't raise money to help yours, but we've got all the money to bail ours out while they disappear. Hello, Kyle Rittenhour. The protest overnight prompted the defense attorney for former officer Derek Chauvin, who is facing murder and manslaughter charges for George Floyd's death, to ask the presiding judge over the high-profile case to sequester the jury. Judge Peter Cahill refused, stating this is a totally different case.
Chauvin is facing murder and manslaughter charges for his role in Floyd's death on May 25th, which occurred during his arrest for allegedly passing a fake $20 bill. 45-year-old Chauvin, who was white, was seen in a video taken by bystander. Okay, we know all that. Defense was trying to use that for a motion to sequester the jury early. We'll get back to that story, but let's move on to our highlights. Philonise Floyd tells story behind some of his brother's childhood photos during testimony. He recounted memories of his late sibling during his testimony today, telling the story behind pictures the prosecution showed. Philonise Floyd became emotional when the protection introduced the prosecution. Some of these things have typos, forgive me. Introduced a photo pictured below of Floyd and his late mother, Larcenia. In it, Floyd is seen as a young child, resting his head on his mother's chest while he sleeps. In another photo, Philonise Floyd talked about his brother's time as a basketball player at South Florida Community College. Floyd below on the left loved to play basketball, Philonise said. I'll show the pictures later. He also loved to teach the game to others. We always went hooping, said Philonise Floyd. I learned the game from him. Professor Seth Stoughton took the stand as an expert witness for the prosecution. He's an associate professor of law at the University of South Carolina, where he studies policing and use of force. The defense had filed a motion objecting to his appearance, arguing that the state had already called a number of use of force experts, including several members of the Minneapolis Police Department. Hennepin County District Court Judge Peter Cahill allowed Stoughton to take the stand, but set limitations to his testimony, saying he could testify about national standards for use of force and about whether or not he believes the crowd in this instance could have been a factor in Chauvin's response. Mr. Floyd's brother was called to the stand as the second Spark of Life witness to testify. Jurors already heard from Floyd's girlfriend, Courtney Ross, who testified that, like so many Americans, they had a shared struggle with opioid addiction. Both Floyd and I, our story, it's a classic story of how many people get addicted to opioids. Me speaking, they get rehab. Our brothers and sisters got jail and are still there during slavery under the private prison industrial complex. We both struggled from chronic pain. Mine was in my neck, his was in his back. The Spark of Life testimony is intended to humanize Floyd and to give jurors a fuller view of who he was. In calling Ross to the stand, prosecutors sought to control the narrative around his struggle with drugs. During his testimony, cardiologist Dr. Jonathan Rich affirmed much of what other medical experts called by the prosecution have said about the cause of George Floyd's death. Quote, after reviewing all the facts in the evidence of the case, I can state with a high degree of medical certainty that George Floyd did not die from a primary cardiac event. He did not die from a drug overdose, Rich said. I felt pretty confident that Mr. Floyd had 3 medical problems, Rich added: hypertension, anxiety, ADOX life, and substance abuse, but there was no evidence of heart disease. Rich believes it was low oxygen caused by the officers' plural, restraint that led to Floyd's death. So I share with you that the judge denied the sequester. Let's see if there's any more to that bit. Hennepin County District Judge Peter Cahill denied the motion from the defense this morning to sequester the jury following civil unrest after Daunte Wright, 20 years old, was shot and killed by police on Sunday during a stop for a traffic violation. That was air fresheners hanging from his mother's rearview mirror of her automobile. He's a biracial child. To my understanding, all I saw was the mother. She looks white to me, but I'm assuming that his father is black. I haven't seen the father's photo. Wright's death just miles away from where George Floyd died. And the officer involved incident once again led to protests and unrest in the state. Defense attorney Eric Nelson argued the fairly extensive civil unrest and concerns that jurors may be biased in their verdict over such events should lead to the jury being sequestered. The prosecution was against the motion, of course. In his denial of the motion, Cahill said this is a totally different case. The judge added that such a request could have the opposite of the intended effect if the jury was suddenly sequestered and then believed there was a greater threat to their security because of the recent unrest. That's a valid point when you think about it. Thank you guys for your support. Thank you for joining the live. I'm going to fly my banner in the event you'd like to bless my efforts. We greatly appreciate it here over at the Reparationist Perspective, which enables me to educate the masses and to advocate for ADOX. Okay, back to the text. So he's saying that it could have an opposite effect. So it'd be different if it was civil unrest following another verdict, where the jury can see what the consequences of a certain verdict might be in a similar case. But that's not this case, he said. Cahill said the jury would be sequestered after testimony has ended and both sides begin their closing statements. MSNBC legal analyst Paul Butler says Chauvin's defense never had any real hope of having jurors sent to a hotel room for the trial's duration, but instead made the application as an insurance policy. Requesting for the jury be sequestered is really a way that the defense can preserve this issue on appeal, Butler said. Cardiologist Jonathan Rich took the stand today as the first witness in the third week of testimony in the Derek Chauvin trial. Rich works at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago and is an associate professor at Northwestern University. Rich will be providing his opinion on how he believes George Floyd died. He said this is his first time testifying in a trial. Police shot and killed a black man on Sunday during a stop for a traffic violation. Okay, so that looks like that is it of the updates for the Derek Chauvin trial, day 11. Now, let's get into some things here. Okay, welcome to the live, one and all. Let me share. And then we're going to talk about it. Mr. Daunte Wright execution.
Now is just outside of the Brooklyn Center Police Department, which of course is just miles away from Minneapolis. You can see over my shoulder here, police in riot gear standing by. The civil unrest happened all because of a traffic stop yesterday afternoon at around 2 o'clock local time. Brooklyn Center Police pull over 20-year-old Daunte Wright. They say he had an expired warrant. They tried to take him into custody. According to police, this young man goes back into his vehicle. That's when shots were fired, and he ended up dying. Now, moments later, hours later, as word travels, hundreds of people flock to the location, this neighborhood of where this young man was killed, protesting another Black life lost at the hands of police. Over the course of time, we start to see police arriving there with riot gear on. According to many witnesses on the scene, rubber bullets were deployed there. People just really emotional, obviously, given what we've seen over the last year in this area. From there, that's when the crowd of over 100 people, 200 people we're told, start marching to the police department here, meeting police who, again, are in riot gear. Flashbangs were deployed. Tear gas was deployed on protesters, many of whom say they threw rocks back at the police. windows at the police station here broken. And then nearby, not far from where we are here at a shopping center, looters went into stores, and of course, police there on the scene trying to contain the situation in a community that is certainly on edge. As you mentioned, the National Guard has been deployed. State agencies are right now investigating this. The police chief saying that there is body camera video they believe that they will be using as part of this ongoing investigation. And Steph, right now, we are standing by for a
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel.
Let's read a little bit about this young man. He's 20-year-old Dante Wright. Police Chief Tim Gannon has told media the shooting was an accident. It's my belief the officer mentioned it. Okay, I don't see anything new to report here. I'm not going to indulge that. I want to move on and talk about how these things are able to happen. And this is why we must fight and lean in, ADOCs and allies, for reparations, because dollars bring dignity, and being poor makes us targets for government-sanctioned executions. This is what happens to people who have been neutralized economically. So let's talk about how Minneapolis ranks near the bottom for racial equality. This is an article from June 2nd, 2020. So it's a little dated, but it's nonetheless, it was very difficult to find the median income for Blacks in Minnesota. They have data back to 2015. Like, it's just difficult to find this information. Last week, we shared findings showing how the COVID-19 crisis is making racial inequality worse. Since we published that newsletter, protests erupted in Minneapolis and spread throughout the nation, with marchers shouting, "I can't breathe," the dying words of George Floyd, who was seen in a video with the knee of a Minneapolis police officer on his neck. So, about Minneapolis, we found it. And the Twin Cities are more generally, has some of the most abysmal numbers on racial inequality in the nation. Here's a snapshot. The median Black family in the Twin Cities area earns $38,178 a year, which is less than half of the median white family income of $84,459 a year. This income inequality gap is one of the largest in the nation. Only nearby Milwaukee, Wisconsin is worse. The state of Minnesota as a whole has the second biggest income inequality gap between Blacks and whites in the entire nation. Only the District of Columbia is worse. DC, you know, where you guys keep voting blue no matter who. Before the pandemic, the Black unemployment rate in Minnesota was at a historic low, but it was still double the white rate. In 2016, the Twin Cities area Black unemployment rate was more than 3 times the white unemployment rate. According to the most recent census data, the Black poverty rate in the Twin Cities area was 25.4%, which is over 4 times the white poverty rate of 5.9%. The Twin Cities area Black poverty rate is significant, additional Black poverty rate of 22%. While the white poverty rate is significantly lower than the national one of 9%. While about 3/4 of white families in the Twin Cities own homes, only about 1/4 of Black families do. The area had a long history where racial covenants made it hard for Blacks to become home buyers and live in white neighborhoods. In 2019, the incarceration rate of the Twin Cities area was 11 times that of whites. The state of Minnesota has one of the nation's worst education achievement gaps between Blacks and whites. In 2019, it ranked 50th when it comes to racial disparities in high school graduation rates. These data aren't about police bias directly. Instead, they are the persistent, troubling numbers that sit underneath the rising sense of unfairness, frustration, desperation, and anger that we've seen over the last week. Me speaking. Where are the race soldiers prone to go for the kill? In a neighborhood where your median income is $84,000, or in the neighborhood where this is the truth of what's really happening in the Twin Cities, $24,000. They said $38,000 here. That's a lie. So where are the race soldiers more likely to execute people? This is all about police bias. I've shared with you about a 2016 FBI investigation that said from 2006 to their final numbers that the KKK, the skinheads, and the neo-Nazis have pretty much infiltrated the police forces all throughout the country. Okay? And as a result, they're hiring these race soldiers because to not hire them because of their association with these hate groups that Biden refuses, and all the presidents that precede him refuse to deem domestic terrorists. They're hired on the force because, according to the people that hire them, it is a violation of their First Amendment not to be able to affiliate with the KKK, the neo-Nazis, and the skinheads. Look it up. So it's absolutely about these race soldiers not living in our communities. They live in the communities where, you know, the people are earning $84,000 a year, but they come to our communities to execute us with impunity. Keep in mind, all these numbers were a snapshot of the situation before the economic collapse. Okay, we're at 6:32. Let me see here. Confronting the Black home ownership gap in Minnesota. Minnesota's racial disparity in home ownership is one of the highest in the nation. How Twin Cities families and organizations are striving to change that. Most people feel a sense of pride and accomplishment that they're building for their future when they buy their first home. Me speaking, it is a way we transfer wealth to our children. Jovanta Patton felt all that and more. As a Black man, the Minneapolis musician had overcome systemic racial barriers to achieve his goal of owning a home by the time he was 30. It's out of the norm, he said. Few people in his family have experience with home ownership. My mom didn't own, my dad didn't own, he said. A sister is the only one of his 4 siblings who owns her own home. The chart-topping gospel singer and composer was determined to own a home and build equity for his family. As his 30th birthday approached, he and his wife, Simone, were expecting their 3rd child. I wanted to be settled with a home for my kids, he said. They made an offer on one house, but withdrew it after an inspection revealed structural problems. Then, in answer to his prayer, the Pattons found a new house in North Minneapolis that had been developed by PRG Inc., a nonprofit focused on affordable housing and home ownership education. They paid $240,000 and took possession on Good Friday, a month after Jovanta's 30th birthday. I was nervous about the closing, he said. I'm a musician. I don't get a W-2. I was on pins and needles with the bank. See, we have to be out here on a wing and a prayer that everything turns out all right for us. When our ancestors' heinous chattel slave labor built all the wealth these other Mickey Fickies eat from. I've got an action item for you at the conclusion of this broadcast. After the closing came worry. The couple's income took a big hit during the pandemic. All my bookings were canceled, he said. I got discouraged. I met my goal to get this house. How am I going to pay for it? This is what's happening to the rest of ADOCs that did not get left behind under Obama. Obama created 1 million white millionaires during his tenure, while over 53% of ADOCs lost their wealth, their homes. And so this particular pandemic is to wipe the rest of ADOX off the monopoly board. Fortunately, he found some opportunities to do virtual concerts, including a Facebook Live event. Black man married with 3 kids. No W-2 income. Our unemployment and underemployment rates are off the chart. Now the family is enjoying their home, including their newly landscaped backyard. That's a fun thing, being able to put a personal touch on the home. Owning, he said, is everything I needed and dreamed to have. I'm in control. Absolutely right. When we own homes, we've got equity. If you buy in a good area, you've got equity that you can transfer to your children. You've got wealth to transfer when you have a home that has equity in it. Sadly, we can only afford to buy in environmentally racist communities where the home values don't go up, because we don't make enough money to be in the more pristine neighborhoods. This is why we fight for reparations and a Black agenda. So in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, where that race soldier that recently shot Mr. Wright heralds as a race soldier, Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, the population is 79,792. The median age is 34.6. Poverty rate, mostly us, 9.28%. Median household income here shows 70,448, and the median property value is 208,800. Number of employees, 41,816. This is where 20-year-old Mr. Daunte Wright was executed. So I already shared with you the median income since COVID is 24,000 for ADOX. I am going to my last thing that I want to share. Let me make sure. That's all I want to share today. Yep. So I want to pay homage to the fallen since George Floyd by the gun of the race soldier. I want to pay homage. In memoriam, I can't breathe. This is written on May 29, 2020. So I'm only going to read the executions by the race soldiers since George Floyd. I am angry. I am anguished. I am heartbroken. I am hollowed out. I am sick and tired of police needlessly killing Black and brown people. ADOX. Some police still see Black men as threats to brutalize, to contain, to remand. They have stereotyped our grandfathers, fathers, husbands, sons, and nephews as monsters, subject to violence and death. They have killed our grandmothers, mothers, wives, daughters, and nieces. Every time I watch the video of George Floyd's death, my heart weeps. Who, in their right mind, kneels on another human's neck and ignores desperate pleas of "I can't breathe"? Where is the humanity of these white police officers? Policing should not be predicated on brutal force and a complete disdain for Black life. White inferiority, me speaking, has no place in the criminal justice system, in government, in the White House, in the United States. Black lives matter every second, every minute, every hour, every day. The universe shrank when you went away. Every time I thought your name, stars fell upon me. Henry Dumas, poet, social activist, teacher. Rest in power, Dante Demetrius Wright. October 27, 2000 to April 11, 2021. Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, shot. Brooklyn Center police officer, April 11, 2021. Rest in power, Patrick Lynn Warren Sr., October 7, 1968 to January 10, 2021. Killeen, Texas, shot. Killeen police officers on January 10, 2021. Rest in power, Vincent Vinny M. Belmonte, September 14, 2001 to January 5, 2021. Cleveland, Ohio, shot by the race soldier from the Cleveland Police Department on January 5th, 2021. Rest in power, Angelo Quinto, March 10th, 1990 to December 26, 2020. Antioch, California, knee on the neck, asphyxiated by the race soldiers, December 23rd, 2020. Andre Maurice Hill, rest in power, May 23rd, 1973 to December 22nd, 2020. Columbus, Ohio, shot December 22nd, 2020. Rest in power, Casey Christopher Goodson Jr., January 30th, 1997 to December 4th, 2020. Shot by the race soldiers from the Franklin County Sheriff Deputy on December 4th, 2020. Rest in power, Angelo A.J. Crooms, May 15, 2004 to November 13, 2020, Cocoa, Florida, shot on November 13, 2020 by the race soldiers of the Brevard County Sheriff Deputies. Rest in power, Sincere Pierce, April 2nd, 2002 to November 13, 2020, Cocoa, Florida, shot on November 13, 2020 by the race soldiers from the Brevard County Sheriff Deputies. Rest in power, Marcellus Stinnett, June 17, 2001 to October 20th, 2020. Waukegan, Illinois, shot by the race soldiers of Waukegan police officers on October 20th, 2020. Rest in power, Jonathan Dwayne Price, November 3rd, 1988 to October 3rd, 2020, Wolf City, Texas, tasered and then shot by the race soldiers from the Wolf City Police Office Department on October 3rd, 2020. Rest in power, Dejan Duran Kizzy, February 5th, 1991 to August 31st, 2020. Shot by the race soldiers of the LA County PD, August 21st, 2020. Rest in power, Rayshard Brooks, January 31st, 1993 through June 12th, 2020. shot by the race soldiers of the Atlanta Police Department on June 12, 2020. Rest in power, Carlos Carson, May 16, 1984, June 6, 2020, Tulsa, Oklahoma, pepper sprayed, shot in the head. On June 6, 2020, Knights in Tulsa armed security guard, former sergeant and detention officer with the Tulsa County Sheriff's Office. Rest in power, David McAtee, August 13, 1966 to June 1st, 2020, Louisville, Kentucky, shot by the race soldiers of the Louisville Metropolitan Police Department on June 1st, 2020. Rest in power, Tony McDade, affectionately known as Tony the Tiger. 1982 to May 27, 2020, Tallahassee, Florida, executed by the race soldiers, shot by the Tallahassee Police Department. And finally, Mr. George Perry Floyd, October 14, 1973 to May 25, 2020. Powderhorn, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Knee on the neck, asphyxiated by Derek Chauvin, the race soldier from the Minneapolis PD. I think I'm done, family. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever ADOX and its allies are, God truly is, because you are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. I love you, Black. I love you, Strong. Peace.